An alien invasion of Earth has begun out of nowhere, but unbeknownst to everyone, this isn't the first extraterrestrial visit Earth has had. On July 2nd, a large shadow appears over the moon at the spot where the Apollo 11 mission left behind a lander and the American flag. The shadow is accompanied by strong vibrations that erase the Apollo astronauts' footprints. It is revealed that all this is being caused by a massive spaceship approaching Earth. In New Mexico, a young intern at the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, or SETI, facility hears a strange signal, and he excitedly wakes up his boss, who immediately orders to check for the source of the signal. However, they are all confused when they find out that it is actually coming from the moon. General Williams is informed of this event at the Pentagon. He is shown radar images of an object that has been detected approaching Earth, which is revealed to be 1/4 the size of the moon. Williams asks if it is an asteroid, but he is told that it can't be because it is slowing down. He immediately calls the Secretary of Defense. At the White House, the President of the United States, Thomas Whitmore, wakes up and calls his wife Marilyn. Thomas is a former Air Force pilot whose approval ratings as president have been dropping since his election. The White House Communications Director, Connie, tells him that the media is attacking him for being too young. Just then, he gets a call from the Secretary of Defense, and whatever he hears shocks him. Meanwhile, in space, satellites start crashing into the approaching alien mothership. In New York, a technician named David plays chess with his father, Julius. David, who cares about saving the environment, tells his father to stop using plastic cups. Julius tells David to stop wearing his wedding ring because he's been divorced for 3 years. Cold. David finishes the game and heads to work. David works at a cable company, and his boss tells him that they've been experiencing problems with broadcasts all day. He tells his boss to just point their dishes at another satellite, and he replies that they've been trying that all day, but it's as if the satellites just aren't there. David becomes worried. Next, a retired combat pilot named Russell Case is scolded by his son Miguel for dusting the wrong crop field. It is revealed that Russell is an alcoholic. Meanwhile, in space, several giant saucer-shaped ships detach from the mothership and start heading toward Earth. The President and the Secretary of Defense, Albert Nimziki, are informed of this latest development and are told that most of the defense satellites are suddenly malfunctioning, hampering their ability to get more information. They learn that the saucers are 15 miles wide and heading toward major cities, such as capitals, all over the globe, creating panic among the masses. They learn that one of the saucers is coming to Washington, D.C., and Thomas is advised to evacuate. He tells Nimziki to get the rest of the government officials to a secure location, but chooses to stay in the White House himself because he doesn't want to add to the panic. In New York, David hears the same signal coming from a satellite that SETI was analyzing, and after analyzing its pattern, he notices that it is subtly diminishing over time and will be completely finished in 7 hours. Meanwhile, Russell is mocked by the locals because he's been trying to tell people for a long time that he was abducted by aliens, but nobody believes him. However, just as they are mocking him, one of the saucers appears on top of the area, and Russell has a look of familiar horror on his face. In similar fashion, the saucers arrive and settle over several major cities like Los Angeles, New York, and Washington, D.C. In Los Angeles, an Air Force pilot named Steven is sleeping with his girlfriend Jasmine. Jasmine's son Dylan tries to wake them up and tell them about the saucer, but they just assume that it's an earthquake and keep sleeping. In New York, David sees the saucer and suddenly realizes something about the signal he analyzed. Meanwhile, Thomas prepares to address the nation and tell them not to panic and stay in their homes. In Los Angeles, Steven wakes up and finally spots the saucer. Both he and Jasmine are horrified. In New York, David tells his boss that there's a reason the saucers are all positioned over every major city in the world. The diminishing signal is a timer, and when it's over in exactly 6 hours, the saucers are going to launch a coordinated attack. He calls Connie, who is revealed to be his ex-wife, to tell her his theory, but she doesn't listen. Meanwhile, Steven is called into duty, and Jasmine is upset because she's worried about his safety. David arrives at Julius's house and tells him to drive him to the White House. While driving, Julius says that the White House probably already knows this, They don't need to hear it from someone who went to MIT for 8 years only to end up as a cable guy. This inadvertently reveals that David is a genius. Meanwhile, Miguel sees Russell on the news shouting about how the aliens have been studying them for years and how he was kidnapped by them. Just then, Russell arrives home and tells Miguel they gotta leave. Steven arrives at his base, where he finds a letter from NASA revealing that his application to be an astronaut has been rejected. His best friend Jimmy comforts him. Jimmy learns that Steven is planning to propose to Jasmine. He points out that Steven will never be an astronaut if he marries a stripper. This inadvertently reveals that Jasmine is a stripper. David arrives at the White House and connects with Connie, asking her to get him a meeting with the president. Connie is annoyed by David, but agrees. Meanwhile, the military set a helicopter up with a visual communication device and send it out toward the saucer. Thomas arrives to meet David, and David explains that he's found the alien signal coming from their own satellites, which means that the aliens are using their own satellites against them to coordinate an attack. He shows Thomas the countdown. The helicopter trying to communicate with the saucer is shot down by the aliens, and Thomas, realizing the hostile intentions of the aliens, immediately orders an evacuation of the cities. David and Julius join the White House staff as they are being evacuated. While Thomas leaves the White House, his wife is being evacuated from Los Angeles. As she is getting into the helicopter, the saucers start opening up over all the cities. Right as David sits in the plane, he sees the countdown hit 0, and just then, all the saucers fire a weapon of mass destruction, which creates an explosion that easily levels an entire city. The president's plane barely outruns the explosion. Meanwhile, Jasmine, who is stuck in a tunnel, sees the explosion in her rear view and makes a run for it with Dylan in her arms. She uses her strong stripper legs to kick open the door to a maintenance tunnel and hides in there to survive the explosion. The next day, on July 3rd, Thomas sits on the plane regretting not ordering evacuations earlier. Meanwhile, Jasmine comes out of the tunnel to see the ruins of Los Angeles. Steven and Jimmy prepare to join the squadron heading out for a counterattack against the saucer over Los Angeles. As they fly over the ruins of the city, Steven wonders if Jasmine made it out, and regrets not bringing her to the base with him. The squadron approaches the saucer and fires several missiles, but it is revealed that the saucer has a protective shield around it, and none of the missiles hit. Next, the aliens send out fighter jets of their own, and they have protective shields as well, leaving the squadron no chance of winning. Most of the jets are destroyed before Thomas can give an order to fall back, but Jimmy and Steven manage to fly away, with an alien fighter still tailing them. Jimmy is unable to keep up with its maneuvering, and his jet is shot and destroyed. Meanwhile, the base that the squadron flew out of is also attacked by alien fighters and destroyed. Outraged at the death of his friend, Steven tricks the alien fighter to crash into a canyon by deploying a parachute to blind it. He checks the crashed fighter, and an alien comes out of it. He punches the alien and knocks him out.
Welcome to Earth.
On the plane, David overhears Nimziki, Thomas, and Williams discussing the possibility of launching nuclear missiles at the aliens, and he strongly objects to it, pointing out that the fallout would not just kill the aliens, but themselves, too. When they try to shut him up, Julius arrives and defends his son, saying that they'd all be dead if it wasn't for David. Then, Julius goes on a rant that the government has known about aliens for a long time. It's what they've been doing in Area 51 ever since the infamous crash in Roswell, New Mexico. David gets embarrassed, and Thomas assures Julius that there is no Area 51, but Nimziki reveals that that is not entirely accurate. Meanwhile, Jasmine finds a truck and starts collecting survivors through the ruins of Los Angeles, amongst whom she finds Marilyn. Steven is dragging the body of the knocked-out alien through the desert when he encounters a bunch of campers that are evacuating. Among them is Russell and his family. Steven says he saw a base when he was flying over the desert. Russell says there is no base on the map. Steven realizes the base he saw was Area 51. Thomas arrives in Area 51 and demands to know why he wasn't told about this. Nimziki says that they wanted the president to have plausible deniability. Dr. Okun arrives and shows Thomas the alien fighter that was recovered in the Roswell crash, and then proceeds to show the bodies of the 3 aliens that died in the crash. He says that the alien bodies are frail and perishable like humans, but their technology is far too advanced to defeat them. He also points out that the aliens do not have vocal cords and communicate through some form of telepathy. Stephen arrives at Area 51, and the body of the alien gets him clearance to come in. Thomas is informed that many more major cities have been destroyed across the US and the world. Several NATO bases have also been hit, and the armed forces are down to 15%. Thomas asks to see the alien that Stephen has brought in. Meanwhile, Jasmine and Marilyn bond while discussing Jasmine's stripper career. Dr. Okun and his team begin examining the alien's body. However, the operation goes horribly wrong, as the alien wakes up in the middle of it. It telepathically tortures Okun while killing the rest of the doctors. Thomas arrives, and the alien speaks to him through Okun's vocal cords. Thomas asks if there can be a peace between their two species, but the alien declines that offer. It starts torturing Thomas telepathically, and Williams shoots and kills it. Thomas reveals that he saw the entire plan of the aliens in his head. The aliens are like locusts. They move from planet to planet, consuming every natural resource they can find. He gives the order to launch nukes. Stephen steals a helicopter to go find Jasmine in LA. Meanwhile, David and Connie discuss their broken marriage. Connie says that she loved David, but he just wasn't ambitious, and she was. She wanted to be part of something special, and he didn't. David says he was part of something special. Their marriage, cold. Thomas watches nuclear missiles fly toward the saucer over Houston, and for a moment it looks like the nuke has worked, but visual confirmation reveals that the saucer has survived. Everyone is devastated, unsure of what else they can possibly do. Stephen rescues Jasmine and Marilyn, but when Thomas comes to see Marilyn in the hospital, he is informed that she's been bleeding internally for a while, and it is too late to save her. Thomas holds Marilyn in her final moments and watches her pass away, which devastates him. The next morning, on the 4th of July, Julius finds a disheartened and drunk David lying on the floor and tells him to get up before he catches a cold. This gives David an idea. David calls everyone to the room where the crashed fighter is and demonstrates that he can disable the shield of the fighter by implanting a computer virus in it using the alien signal he decoded earlier. He proposes that they fly this fighter out to the mothership and implant a virus in it, which would effectively take down the shields of all the saucers and fighters on Earth. They can then launch a counteroffensive, destroying both the mothership and all the saucers on Earth. Nimziki thinks this plan is crazy and points out that no one on Earth is qualified to fly this alien fighter. Stephen steps up and says that he's seen these things in action and knows their maneuvering capability. Thomas approves of the plan. Nimziki tries to talk him out of it, but Thomas fires him. Next, forces of different countries around the world are informed of this plan and are organized for a single human attack when the shields go down. Due to low manpower, the military asks for people around the base who have flight experience, and Russell steps up. David and Stephen prepare to fly out to the mothership, as their fighter is fitted with a nuclear weapon to destroy it. Worrying for David, Connie asks him to let someone else do this, but David has finally decided to become ambitious and save the world himself. Jasmine and Stephen decide to get married, and David and Connie serve as their witnesses. Connie notices that David still wears their wedding ring, and she lovingly holds his hand. Next, Thomas comes out to speak to all the pilots who are nervous and gives a rousing speech. He says that on this 4th of July, they are fighting for their independence once again, but not just as a country, as one mankind that refuses to go quietly into the night. His speech motivates the soldiers, and afterward, he gets into a jet himself to join the fight. Stephen and David fly out to the mothership, dock with it, and upload the virus as planned. As the virus is uploaded, Thomas fires a missile at the saucer, and while the first one doesn't connect, he takes another shot, and that one is a direct hit. The battle commences. The humans cause significant damage to the saucer and take out most of the alien fighters, but the damage is not enough to bring it down, and they start running out of missiles. The saucer starts arming its primary weapon, and Thomas orders anyone with missiles left to take it out. Russell arrives on the scene, but the one missile he has left jams. For the sake of his children, he flies his plane straight into the beam of the weapon as it is about to fire, causing it to malfunction and destroy the entire saucer. Thomas tells William to spread the word around the globe on how to destroy the saucers. In the mothership, David and Stephen's fighter gets captured, and they realize that they won't be able to escape in time after deploying the nuke. In a sacrificial act, they deploy the nuke, but it hits the alien control room, freeing their fighter. Stephen manages to fly them out of the mothership exactly 10 seconds before the nuke explodes. On Earth, saucers start falling all over the globe. Thomas returns to the base, greeted with cheers. He asks about David and Stephen, and it is revealed that something has been spotted entering the atmosphere over the desert. Thomas, William, Jasmine, Dylan, Connie, and Julius arrive in the desert and greet the returning heroes. They all watch as the debris of the mothership falls to the earth. Thomas's daughter wishes him a happy 4th of July. The end.